Welcome to Tech Ties and Human Vibes, where we explore the tech that powers modern businesses and drives innovation. I'm Adam, and with me is Nancy. We'll be talking to entrepreneurs, innovators, and industry experts about the tools they use, the challenges they face, and how technology is shaping the future of work. Let's dive in.
Hey, I'm Adam Nelson with Tech Ties and Human Vibes, and I would like to thank our lovely co-host here, Nancy Henriquez. Nancy, thank you for joining us today. And I'm going to call him a friend, a past coworker, an author, Tim Bookout. Tim, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and a little bit about your book and what you do and where you came from?
Yeah. Thanks, Adam. Yeah, so I've been in sales pretty much my whole life, and that evolved with some small or medium-sized companies to becoming sales and marketing director. And so within that role, I was always in charge of trade shows, and then floated in and out of different companies, and sometimes and it eventually ended up with the trade group who I work with now about 7 years ago, where you worked, where we met first, Adam, and. So for the past almost 30 years, I've been involved with trade shows in one way or another, and kind of in a consulting role. I'm selling, obviously, exhibits and services and those kind of things, but I feel like responsible to tell the small businesses, give them great advice so they don't waste their money. And I kept answering the same questions over and over again, or trying to encourage them to think through, what their whole return on investment would be. And so I started out with I was writing I was going to make a two-page document so I could just like send it off to them every time and say, hey, look, here's some of the things that we're going to discuss about return on investment. And then it turned into 4 pages, and then 16, and then 32, and now it's like a whole book. So I'm like, what the heck? I figure uh, I'm going to end up giving away hundreds of these things and probably sell seven of them. But anyway, I did write the book, and it's going to be coming out on Amazon, I think later this week or next week, and have it on Kindle and those kind of things. So that's in a nutshell what's going on with me right now.
That
That
is
sounds
awesome.
sounds
So,
exciting.
you're a fellow author. Well, you're ahead of me because I'm still working on the book. You're published. That is fantastic. Congratulations for
Thank you.
that.
Thank you.
And from what I've heard so far, it seems like you knew Adam before me, and so you have a lot of Adam secrets that you're going to share on this podcast, right?
I'll tell you after. No, we had a lot in common. We spent, because Adam was remote. We didn't spend a lot of time together, but when we get together as a whole company, he and I just kind of like gravitated toward each other and had great conversations and enjoyed some of the same things. So that was neat.
Tim's a great guy, and I'm a great guy, so that's why it just worked out,
Right.
Nancy.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense to me. That makes perfect sense to me. But Tim, how awesome is it, first of all, that your last name is Bookout?
Mhm.
Like you're in sales and your last name is Bookout. Like people
Right.
book you out.
Right.
Um,
Right.
did you go into sales because of your last name, or was that like something that you just stumbled upon? Um,
It's been my
what led you to that?
whole life. I don't know I think when I was like 7 or 8 years old, I would sell tickets when at big family reunions and stuff. Whether we put together a quick magic show or a whatever comedy show quickly with all my cousins, and I'd go sell tickets to everybody, and I'd keep all the money. So, uh, uh, and but yeah, been in sales my whole life. That's just what I gravitated toward.
How'd
And
you
then
get into the trade show business?
yeah, so let me think back. The first well, I founded a small company. It's a hockey rink. I patented a product for roller hockey back in the 90s. A lot of your audience is too young to even know that, but there was roller hockey really, really big. And
Nancy would be one of those people way too young to know that.
yeah. And so I had my own company, and then another company said, "Hey, I really like that. Would you please come over and take over a territory for us, and focus on our products?" And it evolved into like doing market sales and marketing in a region for a dozen companies at the same time. So that was pretty interesting. And they all part of their plan was to do trade shows, or at least I would enlighten them. Hey guys, there's buying conferences, there's trade shows, and this is mostly in the restaurant business. So there would be the National Restaurant Show, the Texas Restaurant Show, Oklahoma Indian Gaming Association with all the casinos, and Louisiana shows, and then buying conferences, all these things. So pretty quickly, I had to learn all the details about that and what are good ones, what are bad ones, where's a good investment. I would need for 12 companies, I would be advising them on whether to do the show or not, and how big to go with the show, and what products to display, and how to man the booths, and all those kind of things. So it got immersed in that almost immediately. And then eventually, a trade show supply company, one that supplies portable modular exhibits, hired me. And then I was selling to the trade group, and they called me one day and said, "Hey, we really would like you to come aboard with us and take over a particular market segment." So I've been doing that pretty much for 7 years, other than during COVID. Obviously, there weren't a lot of trade shows during COVID. So
That
yeah,
is
that's
awesome.
that's a long story, but anyway, that's how it evolved.
No, I guess I didn't realize all of that. I love the fact that you did some sort of patent or whatever it was
Yeah,
for
yeah. That
roller.
goes way back. But I've done over. Unlike there are maybe 20. Well, there's hundreds of people across the country that sell trade show exhibits, which is what I do. I sell either rentals or purchases, and then all the services that might go along with that. I'm one of the few people, though, that has actually planned and run my trade shows for companies I worked for over 200 times. Like over 200 times, I've picked a trade show booth, the size, picked the displays, gone in for install, dismantle, run the booth and train the staff, or made sure everybody was on, point with the staff. So um, to me,
Wow.
that gives me a lot of experience, in understanding the whole process rather than just selling you an exhibit.
Yeah.
And that's where I picked up a lot of the things that go in the book are things that I picked up over time, that kind of helped me evaluate, was that a good show or a bad show? Should I consider doing a show in the future or not? And that's kind of how this came about.
I love that. So I'm gonna dive right in, if you don't mind, Adam,
Yeah, go
because
for
I am so curious about
it.
this side of the world. So we deal a lot with the managed services community. So that's IT service providers, and like any other industry, we've got our big shows, our small shows, all sorts of shows. Like there's hundreds of shows
Right.
across the world. Um, I've tried to make it to all of them, but sadly, I haven't been able to.
You keep failing every year.
Right? I know 20, what is it, 27 last year that we did.
Oh my
Anyway, so it's but to hear that like you have basically gone through the process of everything with that goes into a trade show and making that selection for 200 times, over 200 times. That's crazy. What are some lessons learned there that we could learn, for our industry,
God.
especially with so many different shows?
Right.
Um, how do you figure out what's the best place? What's the best show? How many times? So on and so forth. So, what
Yeah.
are some lessons there?
I started off, I really got what really propelled this whole thing was, I got called into a meeting. And I just got back from a trade show, and they're like, "We want to talk about this trade show. We want to get all the numbers." I go, "No, no problem. I've got the numbers." I'm like, we spent $27,000. We got 312 leads. It's $88 a lead or whatever. Right in there where everybody's comfortable. So I walk in with that one formula. You know, how many leads we got, and how much it cost us. And now I get hit with all these questions like, "Hey, how many of those were like existing customers versus maybe new customers? Did we sell anything at the show? How about, did we talk to any clients that maybe consider leaving us, and going to somebody else that we maybe saved? Or did you upsell anybody?" I mean, all these things, which are great questions, right? That's what you really need to know, all that. And so I'm like, okay, my world has changed. I can't just tell them how much we spent and how many booth scans we got. Now, I really need to go deeper. So I came up with 6 formulas. These cover most 95% of the things that come up, for most companies and trade shows. It's kind of talking through it. It kind of gets garbled, but I'm happy for you guys or for any of your listeners to just email them the spreadsheet. But it basically comes down to sales.
Oh, you have the formula on a spreadsheet?
Yes.
Oh, yeah, we'll
Yeah.
take it. Thank you.
You know, your people love spreadsheets, right? Uh, my wife does not want to hear the term spreadsheet. She says, "Leave me." Um, but uh, but anyway, the formulas, there's 6 formulas, and I'll just kind of talk real quickly through them. I don't want to bore you to death because it is available. But sales, some companies sell a lot at shows. Some don't sell at all. Some industries you can't sell at a show. So but if it's possible to sell at a show, we need, probably need to look at that. Some companies, they could sell, but they don't even think about it. Or they're like, my product is too complex. Well, do you have an introductory product that maybe you could sell, and get people on the books? And now they're going, oh, we bought this from you. Okay, now we really realize we need something more complex, or we need some consulting or something like that in addition to that. But selling something is great. You can offset the whole cost of the show. Second is growth, which is mostly the booth scans, right? Okay, that's where you're going to grow because you're going to come back with maybe 300 leads of companies that maybe want to do business with you, and then your sales team has to churn that and develop relationships, so forth. Third is retention. How many of every company is going to lose a certain amount of business every year. We don't know what that is, but if you happen to be at the show, or don't happen, if you've intentionally been at a show and made sure that your existing clients come by your booth and talk to you, you may, if you have a serious conversation, you may realize they kind of came to the show to look for a new vendor, and maybe you can save them. Upsells, so you may have clients that just buy the basic product from one of your companies, but really they should be considering a more customized product. So if you can get them in, talk to them, and say, look, you guys are buying this, which is fine. If you bought this, it's a little more money, but it's going to save you so much. Now you can only do, we can do this and this and this and this with that product that it'll be way better for you guys. And then some savings. Here's something that most people never think about. If you had outside sales reps, or even if you're an owner of a small business and you have to travel all over the place, you go to New York, Miami, Detroit, Los Angeles to see your clients, there's a cost associated with that. If you can get with your clients and say, I'm going to be at these 3 trade shows this year, please come see me. Let's sit down and talk. I'm going to have an area in our booth, with coffee, and we can have a little semi-private conversation. You might save, I figured on here, let's say one show, I saved 20 different meetings that I was going to have to do, flying all over the place. If it cost me at least $1,000 a meeting, to fly to New York and get a rental car and a hotel, and maybe I fill in with some other meetings, but that's mainly what I've gone there for. If I say do that, that's $20,000 in savings. That may be the cost for the whole show. If you have a 10 by 10 booth, maybe just taking your booth, shipping it there and setting it up, and that may cost you $10,000. And you may go, dang, I don't know how much new business I got. Well, you may have saved $20,000 in meetings that you don't have to go fly to now. And the last one I have down is lead expense savings. So I understand your audience is a lot of tech companies. They're probably very well aware of like Google Ads and digital marketing and all these kind of things and cost per lead. They probably have that already solidified in their mind. Let's just say if you figure your cost per lead for Google Ads or whatever is $300, and the cost for trade show leads is $200. Now you've saved $100 per lead.
Mm.
So there's going to be a savings cost associated with that. So when I compile all those, and I have an example that I shot off to you guys, and I can send to people. The company, the total return was like $280,000. $100,000 spend. So they got a great payback ratio. They got a 2.8 payback ratio for the whole show. Whereas if all they were thinking about were just how many lead scans did we get, and how long is it going to take to convert those, they may go, you know what, I'm just not going to do that show anymore. But they don't realize the whole payback, the whole scenario. And they maybe, if they really realize that, they may go, dang, we need to maybe do a couple extra shows, or maybe go a little bit bigger, or whatever, and get even a better return.
Ooh, that's when you can start thinking of any more creative ways, basically, to do more with less at the end of the
Exactly.
day.
Yes, yes. And one thing I'll tell you, for small businesses, so many of them do 10 by 10 booths. If they're going to go to a show, they're like, I'm just going to get in for the absolute minimum, a 10 by 10 area. And that may be fine. It really may be. But if they had this whole formula thing worked out and realized what the total return on this is, they may go, you know what? I'm going to splurge for a 10 by 20 booth. And in 10 feet of the space, I'm going to have some chairs and we'll sit down for a little private meeting with some of my current clients or, way to upsell or do some of these kind of things. And then it just could continue to escalate the return on investment.
Love that.
You know, Tim, one of the things we found that works is kind of doing the meeting thing, right? Outside of you're right, you have you go in with a 10 by 10 and then you have meetings set up. But instead of like a one-on-one meeting, which is always great, we'll do like a dinner,
Hmm.
like a pre-dinner
Hmm.
or a post-dinner, something like that
Hmm.
with um, maybe we'll do a mix, some clients and some potential clients,
Yes.
right? That always goes over really well.
Yes.
Is that considered in your formula? Is that considered a meeting?
Yes, absolutely. So, and that's part of the reason this book is 30 pages instead of two, because we get into that, talking about and often, and here I'll just give you an example. I used to always come back and I would say, yeah, we had 78 lead scans. That's how many people came by the booth and we scanned their badge. I didn't even think about sometimes the other people we talked to on the plane or getting ready to leave DFW airport and they're
Mm.
going to the same show. I go, oh, you looks like you're going to such such such. You could see their bat or their, whatever they're wearing. And they're going, yeah, we're heading out there. Maybe we can meet up. I go, well, here's my card. Here's what we do. When you get back, let's have a talk. So there's lots of different things that happen in and around a trade show, where you only got 70 or you got 78 booth scans, but there may be 20 other great meetings that you've had at dinners, at breakfast, just at an event. A lot of shows they'll have little mixers before and after the show or different things happening. Most of us are too tired to go to those. I am. But if you can divide and conquer, if you could say, hey, you know what, Nancy, you go to these two things, I'll go to these two things, whatever, and then now you've had these great interactions with other people. So yes, those do count, absolutely.
So how important would you say is things like your swag when it comes to your booths and your trade show, when you go to trade shows and things like that? Like, so I'm thinking of, right, being able to maximize the real estate as well as the time and
Mhm.
everything that you put into these trade shows. So how important is something like swag?
And Tim, I want you first of all to be very honest with us.
Yes.
Just be
Yeah,
honest.
thank
We
I,
you.
know you sell this, but be honest with
no,
us.
actually, I don't sell it.
Oh, okay.
The trade group used to have an account where we could sell some of that stuff, and we just realized that it's a waste of time for us to get involved with that. I'll answer. Let me be completely honest. Usually, I tended to avoid it. It was just one thing I didn't need to worry about, and I don't want people coming by just because they want this little bouncy ball. I want them to talk. But I will say this: there are professionals. There are people who really, really, really will get to know your business and get to know your clients, your customers, and your prospects, and they can come up with some amazing giveaways that will create a buzz, that will also relate back to your product and help them remember your product and remember coming by your booth, and things. So I don't want to discount that. If you get I would not go online and order some pins or ball caps or whatever. I would call a professional. I maybe do a little bit of research online to LinkedIn or something. Try to find some promotional products professionals in your area, and then look and see how long they've worked there, and see just a few things. Maybe interview two or three of them, and let them come up with something that'll just blow your mind and really create a return on investment if you're going to do it. I don't think it's always necessary. I've seen people have candy in their booth, and I've seen people just walk by at some of these shows, grab the whole bucket, and just pour it in their bag and walk on. I mean, it's insane, and all that does is infuriate you. So you want to keep a good peace of mind, or people that just come by, don't even say hi, just grab your giveaways. It's like that's always going to happen. So if that's going to really bother you, just don't take anything, in my opinion.
Oh, I love that. I love that. What do you do instead, though? What would be some advice in terms of if you have no swag, so nothing to give,
Hmm.
what is the advice there to either get people to your booth or the conversations while at the booth?
I would say pre-planning. We used to get together with all of our booth staff a month before the show, and we're like, let's talk about this show. Let's talk about our attire and all these kind of things and all the housekeeping type of items or where we're going to eat and all this kind of stuff. But then also talk about what is going to be our opening line when somebody is walking by this exhibit. So you never ever want to say, here's the thing that we all want to say, how are you? We already know how they are. Their feet hurt, they're tired, they're a little bit hungover, and they're only here because their boss is making them go to all these booths. Okay. How are they? We know how they are. So I never say, how are you? I say, for example, when I was talking about these outdoor, really cool structures, the line we came up with was, do you do outdoor brand activations? Because if they don't, they may say, no, maybe we should. And then we talk to them, or absolutely we do. And I go, well, you need to find out about this. If they say, no, no interest, boom, I've just saved 5 minutes.
Yeah.
So having a great opening line that all your staff are aware of that will draw people into the right people into your booth can offset maybe having some cool bouncy ball in your, that you're giving away or something.
That's true. That is
Yeah,
true. I like that.
I could totally see that, actually.
But don't discount the fact that you might want to talk to a promotional products professional who can also just blow your mind with something. And maybe it's not something that's sitting out, that everybody can just run by and grab. But when you actually talk to, we did this one time in the event production space, was that when we had somebody come by that we knew that we had invited, they got a that the multi-tool, the leather.
Oh yeah,
the leather,
like a leather. Yeah.
They cost like $100 or something like that, and they're really good, super high quality. They got one of those. They got $100 Leatherman for coming in our booth. But those are people who we pre-planned, or we brought a few extras in case this really high-end customer, these customers that were really awesome for us, and they would walk away with a smile on their face. So yes, it can help.
That's awesome. So I'm gonna switch gears a little bit, and I want to ask more so along the lines of planning for the experience, almost like providing the experience in terms of trade shows and things like that. Um, Lately here, I feel like, at least in our industry, and I don't know in other industries, but our trade shows have become more and more about the experience. And so, what would you say is like how do you figure out whether the experience would actually have a return on investment rather than it just being a regular trade show or something along those lines?
Yeah, experience and experiential marketing is a term that came up, in vogue, what, 5, 8 years ago, something like that. You hear that all the time. Experiential marketing, come in and create an experience. to me, for most of our audience, let's say if you're not a billion-dollar company, the experience in my mind should be connecting with an employee from that company, having an actual where I say, hi Nancy, I'm Tim, and you say hi Tim, and we connect. Uh, you know, Whereas everybody's sending emails back and forth and stuff. That would be the purpose to me of a trade show, is to come in and connect with the staff, and then maybe listen to them. I would listen to you if you're coming by, and let me show you something that would relate a product or service that we have that will help you out. Because with the internet, and I'm old enough, I predate the internet. It used to, you go to a trade show because you have to explain the product. Now, if people want to know about your product, they can probably just go online and learn about it. Watch a whole video on it. They can explain it better than any of the booth staff. So to me, it's the person-to-person connection. That should be the primary experience that should have. But there are some fun things you can do. I'm working with a company that provides fuel tanks for construction sites. So a lot of people will hire let's say they have bulldozers and they have, forklifts, they have all this stuff on a construction site. And sometimes, like, what will happen is every 2 or 3 days, the company will come by and fuel up everything, because they all need diesel fuel or whatever. If they rent one of these tanks, the fuel company can come by once a week or once every 2 weeks to fill that whole thing up, and it costs less per gallon. So what they do is you come by and they want to have people input, their typical, how many pieces of equipment are typically on your construction site, how long is your construction site in place, and whatever. And then they bing, a savings. You would save $32,000 per construction project if you used our fuel tanks. And then we have a leaderboard up top. Who saved the most money at this show? And then they come by and they want to see if anybody beat them, on their savings. Well, people are going to leave that show knowing this is what this company does. This is why it's important. It's important because they help you save money at these construction sites. So now they could have a game of just putting a ball into a thing and you win a prize or something like that, but that wouldn't be as impactful. So
Right.
I think if you have an experience, it's really nice if it can relate directly to your product.
I love the idea. It's completely interactive, and it does relate back to the product. I see a lot of people, mostly in the 10 by 10 section, they'll have a little putting green, something like that, and it might have nothing to do with the booth, the product, anything.
Mhm.
I kind of cringe when I see stuff like that, but that's me.
I'll
I,
tell you when
Hey, I love the basketball ones. I gotta say, I love the basketball ones. It
you're just biased.
doesn't make me want to buy the product, but I just have fun.
the time, Adam, and I'm always going to be um, thinking through exceptions to your rule. I agree with you 99%. Exception might be if something really draws people in, they really want to do this thing for whatever reason, this fun
Yeah,
thing or whatever, and they're standing there in line. And meanwhile, in line, they get to interact with your booth staff or say, okay, now, by the way, they got in line because they want to win this prize or do this putting contest or something. And now they're looking up like, what do you guys do, by the way? Oh, we do this. And this saves you money by doing this. And, oh, we do that. Maybe here, scan my badge, and now they
yeah.
still go on to do the putting thing, but now you have a booth scan that they would have walked by otherwise. So sometimes it can help, but ideally it would relate right back to your product or service.
So what? I get Nancy. I see you want to ask a
I have
question.
another question too,
Okay,
but
go
it's
go
okay.
ahead.
You go first.
All right.
You
Okay.
go
So
first, Adam.
what? I'm just gonna throw this out here. What are like some of the most cringiest, absolutely do not do's at an event or a trade
Okay,
show?
that would be your question, Adam.
Yes, mostly this relates to booth staff, and that's why we have a meeting. Because think about this, even those, let's say you have 8 sales professionals on your team, and they're killers, and they go out, they know how to sell, they sell every day, but they only may work 2 trade shows a year. Okay, and trade shows are a little different, right? So we got to say, hey, okay, guys, let's shift our thinking. I would bring in somebody to do a talk with them. It's a sales professional, a trade show professional to say, let me give you some things to do and not do. There are a lot. I would pay $500 to have somebody come in and tell me because it can make a huge difference at the show. But let me just give you some for free. Do not eat in the booth. No food in the booth. Food stays out of the booth.
I
If you're
agree with
going to
that.
eat something, go eat it somewhere else and then come back.
I
Oh,
agree
for
with
those
that.
that can't see, I'm sitting here shaking my head and pointing at Adam. I don't know,
Adam,
Tim,
no more eating in the booth.
if he told you how we met.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
We met at a trade show.
Uh-huh.
And I was coming in to basically interview for the position that was being offered to me. And Adam decides that it's a great idea right before I get on camera and start recording to give me a Butterfinger. So I
Hey,
blame Adam. It's
to
not
be
my fault that I
fair,
took it and I ate it.
to
Yeah.
It's
be
not my fault.
fair, she was not working the booth. I was working the booth. I was not eating at the
Okay.
booth. I
Okay.
was just handing her a piece of candy. That's
Okay.
all.
Yeah.
So yeah, I
Well,
agree with
That's
how,
no
not
eating.
that's not true. He was eating a piece of candy right before. I caught him and that's why he offered me the candy.
why do I think this is not going to make it to the podcast? So, yeah.
Oh, it
Um,
will.
I'm just gonna
but
remove what
I'll
you
tell you
asked for.
another thing. This is really critical. Is that sometimes shows they ebb and flow with traffic. You know, so your booth staff can be like slammed, and all of a sudden they're like not slammed, and they want to go talk to each other. Oh, I talked to this guy, and this and this and this. I talked to this other person, and you have 3 or 4 people, booth staff, standing in a circle talking about their
Yeah.
experience, or talking about what bar are we going to tonight, or whatever, what are we going to do? Can somebody make dinner reservations, all this stuff. And now somebody walks by and they see three or four people huddled together. Are they going to come into the booth? No, they're going to walk right past. So I'm like, almost arm's length. Nobody come within an arm's length of me unless you just want to tell me something real quick, and then let's separate. Let's go to different areas of the booth. So I would say that those are two freebies. I have like 11 kind of overarching themes of things to not do or not do to get better results in the book, but those are just a couple.
You've got those in the book also then.
Yes, yeah. I put 11,
Cool.
just things to help ROI, because
That's
a big part of the reason for the book is to tell you how to measure, right? Because what you measure is going to improve, and it's going to help you think ahead. You're going to think, oh, we're going to measure retention. I better think ahead about how are we going to retain clients, at this booth thing. Or let's think, oh, let's write everybody a handwritten letter and say, please come by our booth. How many handwritten letters are they going to get? Zero.
Mm.
They're going to get one. They're going to get two, one from Adam and one from Nancy, right? They're not
Yeah.
people. Oh my! I get I get a mail dropped off at my desk maybe once every 3 weeks or something. So if one of those is a letter saying, "Hey, we're going to be at this show. I think we met you last year at this show. Would you please come to our booth? We want to show you something brand new based on the conversation we had." Or whatever. I'm going. You know what? The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go to their booth. So anyway, I did put in some just some sort of overarching guidelines to help ROI. Yeah, and that's
I love that.
one of them.
So for the listeners out there, especially those that are working within those booths, our fellow vendors and all of that within our industry, read that book.
Yeah.
Read that book.
And by the
Um,
way, I think it's $27, and if you buy one, I make $6 or something like that. So I'm counting on it.
there you go. There you go.
So you're not getting rich, is what you're saying.
No. I mostly just wrote it to help my clients or help prospects, and I'm just
Yeah.
giving a bunch of them away. So if somebody really really wants one and they don't want to spend any money, just email me. I assume you can put my email address in your notes.
Yeah, that was going to be one of my questions. If
Yeah.
somebody wanted to reach out to you because maybe they're getting ready to do an event of some
Mhm,
sort
mhm.
and they need your expertise, or they want to find your book, could you give us some information there on how they could do that?
Yeah, my email is the letter T, book out. So tbookout at tradegroup.com. And I'm happy to answer any questions or send you out things. And I'm also happy to talk to clients if they think they may want to talk about business with me, a trade show, exhibit, renting or buying. As far as a year and a half out is really good. Um, if it's going to be 2 weeks from now, that's tougher. We can still maybe help you out a little bit, but I would be thinking ahead 9 months to a year if possible.
Okay,
That's
and then
great
I'll
advice.
put that information in the description as well,
Sure.
if you're okay with that. And
Oh, sure.
yeah,
Yeah. So my question, and I'm grateful I held it in my brain and I did not forget it. My my question is when when you're at a trade show and working the booths itself, obviously I think the goal is to build relationships. But how do you do that? Do you have any tips or anything that you've learned over the years to be able to help someone that is maybe new to the trade shows or any just handling them? What something like that you can say to quickly start off that building the relationship aspect at the trade show? Because I know
Hmm.
they happen fast. There's always people walking by. It's not really the best time to initiate building a relationship, but
Hmm. Hmm.
that's what they're there for, right?
I would say this: if you notice that somebody is rushing by and like for whatever reason you pulled them in or they just stop for a second and you can tell they want to move on, I would say, look, can I just scan your badge? Can you maybe stop back by later when we have more time to chat? And fine. And 80% chance they don't come back, but you scan their badge. At least you got their information. Now you can build that relationship a week or two after the show. Say, hey, we met at the show. You were in a huge hurry. I just want to let you know I haven't forgotten about you, whatever. If somebody is willing to come inside and talk to you for a little while and they seem like they're not like in a huge hurry, it's real. here's what happens for most of us. Before we go to the show, we are reading about all this information about our new products and services that we're going to provide. It's like, okay, this and this and this and this costs this much, and here's who qualifies for this rebate program. Da, 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 da. We're thinking about all of our jargon and all of our stuff and our product. I would encourage people to set that aside in their mind and just try to learn about that person and their company. I would try to ask them at least three. Ask them three questions before you talk about your product, if possible. That's what I would say, 2, 3, 4 questions. And if they answer back, and if you think of another question, ask them. Keep asking them questions. Don't be annoying. But if you
Yeah, Nancy.
truly are curious,
It happens.
yeah. But if you're really curious and you really want to know and whatever, then I would really try to learn about them and their company and be as genuine as you possibly can and just put the blinders on, and all I want to do, this person in front of me, I want to learn about them. And you can build a relationship in 30, 45 seconds, a minute and a half, because that person will think, every other booth I've gone into, I say hi and they put a flyer in my face, here's our new product. Oh my God, whatever. And so this one company made me feel, this is how this company made me feel. It made me feel like they cared about me and wanted to listen to me and the problems I have, why I'm at this show, why I'm at this event, what I'm trying to learn about. And you can do that quickly.
I like that because it kind of a reverse sale, I guess, right? Because you're learning about that other person rather than trying to pitch them something in that
Yep.
30 to 45 seconds.
And I'll tell you a story. One of the greatest college basketball coaches of all time, and I can't pronounce his name, Krzyzewski, the Duke coach. One of the brand new assistant coaches went with him on some recruiting calls, and after the first one, he didn't tell him this, but later on, many years later in an interview, he said, I couldn't believe it. He was so awful at that recruiting visit. He goes, I couldn't believe it. He didn't tell him anything about Duke. He didn't tell anything about the program and how great our all this kind of stuff and our education and how good our degree things are and all this kind of stuff. All he did was ask him a bunch of questions about his interests in the family and what their background, where they came from, and all this stuff. He goes, it was just awful. And guess what? All those kids signed with Duke because the coach cared about them. The coach wasn't trying to force feed them, all about Duke and our fitness center and all that kind of stuff. He was there genuinely. Maybe it was fake, I don't know, but at least the feeling the player got was that this coach cares about me and my family, and it works.
Yeah, that's awesome.
That's the human part, no matter what, no matter where.
Well, Tim, I think we've taken enough of your time today. I do appreciate you taking a few minutes of your day. I know you're a busy guy. Thank you so much for joining our podcast. I know it's kind of an abrupt ending, but we have taken a lot of time today.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. I really enjoyed it, and I hope we can talk again soon.
Yes, for sure, we will.
Yes, thank you so much.
All right, thanks for listening, guys.